Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today I'm going to share with you my journey with Jane Austen. As part of our year-long celebration of Jane Austen's 250th birthday, Charlene at Coffee and a Book and I are both sharing today with you videos describing our journey with Jane Austen and all things Austen related. So, my story with Jane Austen starts a very long time ago, so honestly, the beginning is a little sketchy on the details. So, my memory is not great. Anyway, rewind 30 years, I have no idea. All I know is that my love affair with Jane Austen's novels began when I was a teenager, and probably a pretty young teenager. I'm gonna say 13 or 14, but because by the time 1995 rolled around, when I was 15 years old, and the BBC Pride and Prejudice was produced, as well as the Emma Thompson's Sense and Sensibility, I was already familiar with both of those stories. I had already read those books. There may be a little bit of fudging in the timeline there because I did not watch either of those things immediately when they were produced. I watched them like maybe within the year or two after that. So maybe 1996 or something like that. But by that time, I was already an established, bona fide Jane Austen fan, fully invested. For sure, I had read Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and I'm pretty sure Emma. After that, I'm not sure, let's see, Northanger Abbey, Mansfield Park, and Persuasion. I'm not sure which one was the last one that I read. It might have been Persuasion. Persuasion might have been the last one that I read by Austen. And I don't think that I read them until I was maybe in my early 20s, but I definitely had already loved Austen's primary works that everybody was familiar with, and was a huge fan. So I remember when Sense and Sensibility, the movie, came out, someone sent to us a book, like a friend sent to us a book that was all about the making of the movie and like Emma Thompson's process in writing the screenplay and like pictures from the filming and like little tidbits and information. And I just ate all of that up. Because I was just very much interested in the movie, in the story. I loved the Gwyneth Paltrow movie of Emma. That was a favorite for a long time. So by the late 90s, when I was a teenager, I was a fully invested Jane Austen fan, and nothing has changed since then, honestly. Let's be real. I don't remember exactly what year it was. It had to have been 1997 or 1998. I went on a trip with my sisters to London, and we were privileged to be able to go to the Chawton cottage where Jane Austen lived with her mother and sister, and sometimes I think her friends, Mary and or Martha Lloyd, lived with them there as well, or at least visited them. I have so many fantastic memories of that house and touring it and sitting outside in the garden area, browsing the gift shop. It was wonderful. One of my best travel memories ever, and something I hope to revisit at some point someday. And while I was there, I picked up a couple things. So while I was actually at the Chawton House, I picked up this book. It's called Great Writers, Jane Austen. And I just bought it as a little souvenir book. Oh, wow. I did not even realize. Ha! Wow, okay. Apparently, when I was a teenager, I had an email address, musical@joymail.com. Totally forgot about that. I'm gonna cover that up. That has my maiden name, which, I don't need anybody impersonating me online. But anyways, that's my name I'm covering. But you can see, hopefully it will focus. Come on. Anyway, it says, bought at Jane Austen's house, Chawton, Hampshire. So that's what the little plate says. So I bought that there, and it's just a cute little book with some pictures and illustrations about Austen and her work, and a little bit of some quotes from the books and from her letters, all that kind of stuff. So Anyway, just a little souvenir book. And so this is one of my treasured books that I have because of where I got it from and of course who it's about. So that's that. By the way, it's very appropriate for this video. I am filming in front of my Jane Austen shelf. All of these books here are related to Austen in one way or another. They're either her actual books or they're about her or they're retellings, whatever. It's my Austen shelf. On that same trip to London, we went to, oh goodness, what is that street? There's a street in London where they have an open air market on certain days. And it's like flea market type stuff. Oh goodness gracious, don't even remember. Anyways, I bought a couple of things. One was a ring that I think I still have, but I don't ever wear because I was a very skinny teenager when I got it. But also I picked up this used book. This is a copy of Jane Austen's Juvenilia, Love and Friendship and Other Early Works. And it's a vintage copy, and it says, even in the back, United Kingdom, £1.50. I bought it as a vintage book, so I don't remember how much I paid for it. It says here £2.50. I paid £2.50 for it back when I got it. And it's not in great shape. This particular edition was published in 1979. So, and it has these stories: Love and Friendship, Leslie Castle, The History of England, A Collection of Letters, The Three Sisters. And so I had read all of those as well when I was a teenager. They're very funny. It's a very amusing little collection by Jane Austen. I am thinking that by the time I was in my early 20s, I had read everything by Jane Austen, including her Juvenilia. I don't know that I had read Lady Susan by that point. I don't know that I ever read that one, honestly, until last year. I'm not 100% sure about that. And I know that last year definitely was the first time I read the Watsons, but I had read Sanditon before I read that. There was a point where, you know, I was trying to read everything that I could by Jane Austen, definitely in my early 20s or so. And so I read everything that I could. The other thing that I acquired as a teenager is this copy of this bind up of Jane Austen's books. And you can see Jane Austen in Russian there. And again, my little nameplate there with my name on it. And it has чувство, that is a hard word to say, и чувствительность, Sense and Sensibility, and гордость и предубеждение, Pride and Prejudice, and Нортенгерское аббатство. Can you guess what that is? Нортенгерское аббатство, aka Northanger Abbey. So it has those 3 books in here in Russian. I am not fluent in Russian, but I did study Russian. I mean, there was a point where I was conversationally fluent in Russian, and I bought this particularly so that I could practice my Russian. And I clearly made it up through the 5th chapter because I have underlined words, probably words that I had questions about. I believe I was working through it with my Russian tutor at the time. But I never got past, and that's Pride and Prejudice, I never got past the 5th chapter of it, but it would be fun to actually read it in Russian someday. I have not made an attempt since then, so, you know, I don't think that'll ever happen, but I keep it for the memories. Honestly, my journey with Jane Austen started when I was a teenager, and it just really grew from there. And I can't tell you step by step, year by year, what I did to further this relationship when I reread her books. I do know for sure that I reread Pride and Prejudice and Emma a couple of times over the course of my adult life, in my 20s and in my 30s. Somewhere along the way, more recently, in 2018 or 2019, I decided that I wanted to reread purposefully through all of Austen's books, so that I would have read all of them at least twice. I had already reread Pride and Prejudice and Emma more than once, but I wanted to reread all of them. And so I just finished that last year with Mansfield Park in March. And then now here this year, my goal is to reread all of them in 1 year with the annotated versions. So that's a big acceleration in this process, but I am enjoying every moment of it, to be sure. Somewhere along the way also, I was so invested in the characters and the stories that Jane Austen wrote about that I became very interested in every sort of adaptation that I could find. And this in particular was once Kindle was a thing and I had ready access to a lot of that fan fiction more readily. And so whatever I could find for inexpensively on Kindle, I would just read it up. I read a lot of Pride and Prejudice retellings, so many, so many. For a while there, I was an active part of a group on Goodreads that basically that was their focus. Like it was all about Jane Austen and reading Jane Austen fan fiction. And so there were like challenges or whatever. So there was a year or two there where I read more than once or twice a month a book that was tangentially related somehow to Jane Austen. And that would have been in like the 2010s at some point, somewhere in there. So that furthered my love for Austen. At one point, I had a Scribd subscription, which is Everand now, I think. And when I had that, they had a lot of nonfiction work related to Jane Austen. So they had, there's one that a lot of people talk about, when I find the title, I will put it in the description box. It's a very popular literary analysis of Austen's work, but it focuses on 20 particular things that you will come across in her novels or aspects of her novels that the author provides clarity on and insight into. And it's interesting and it's really easy to read. It's not dull and dry. I found it interesting. And so I cannot remember the title or the author. I think the author is John something or other, but I will put that in the description box because if you are interested in anything related to Austen, definitely check out that book. It really helps provide a lot of clarity to Austen's works and gives a better framework for understanding it than our modern lens allows. So really fantastic book. Anyway, so I read that and I read some other nonfiction works related to Austen, like about the vocabulary, the language that she uses in her book, because the language has changed since then. And everything I read just gave me a deeper appreciation for what Austen was doing in her novels and her skill and her craft. So even when I wasn't actively reading her work itself, I was reading about it. I would have to say that throughout my reading life, there hasn't been a year go by that my reading was not related to Austen in some way. Either it was actually her books, or it was derivatives of her books, or it was books inspired by her, or it was books about her, or it was books about her books. Those have been my constant reading companions and a constant thread in my reading life throughout my entire adulthood. And so, when I put it like that, it makes me sound kind of obsessed, but I guess there are worse things to be obsessed about. There are worse people to be a fan of, for sure. I feel like Jane Austen is a pretty safe one, right? Like, she was a good person by all accounts, and she wrote amazing literature, and what's not to love, right? So anyway, this is very meandering, not a very direct walk through my journey with Jane Austen, but you can just see how much her work and her person has affected me. I feel like the more I've grown as the reader, the more I have appreciated her and the more I want to know about her. A few years back, I think it was 2021, maybe 2022, I bought a ginormous book of her letters. Oh, I lent it to my niece, so I don't have it, but I have a big book. Now, there are some prettier versions that have selected letters by Austen, but this particular one is like a comprehensive collection of all the Austen letters in existence that we know of, and it includes their provenance, and it includes detailed footnotes about who the letters were to or from, who they were about, the places they were about, the context in which they were written, as much as is known. fascinating glimpse into Austen's private life, as much as we can. Like, we know that Cassandra did not keep a lot of Austen's letters, so we don't have the full story, and that's okay. You know, she was a private person with a private life, and it's okay. We don't need to pry, but what is available is certainly very interesting to read. And so that was, you know, another step further into my love affair with Austen and her books. Getting to know her as intimately as is possible, being 250 years removed, plus, you know, having no relation to her whatsoever. So reading her letters was definitely another step in that journey that took me deeper into my love for Jane Austen. And I'm actually thinking probably I should reread it. But first, before I do that, I want to read a similar book I have of the Brontes letters, because I really want to read their works, their letters. That might be much more interesting actually than Austen. I mean, hers were interesting, hers were funny, and some of the comments she made were laugh out loud funny, but I feel like the Brontes would just be more, might have more layers to them. Could be very interesting reading. That is my literary journey with Jane Austen. Really, her work has been a companion of mine all throughout my adult life, since I was a teenager. It has to be observed that part of who I am today was shaped by the books that she wrote and the way that she wrote them and how I have interacted with them. For sure, it's impossible to have been so invested in one person's art and not to have it affect me in some way. So I am sure that my outlook on life, I am sure that the way that I am as a person has been influenced heavily by who Jane Austen is and what she wrote about and how she wrote her stories. And what I appreciate in literature is also very heavily shaped by Austen's work. In fact, one more aspect of my journey, one more little rabbit trail that we can take on this journey with Jane Austen is that because once I read everything that Jane Austen had to offer, I wanted to read what inspired her, or what books she liked, or what books she appreciated. Goldsmith and Anne Radcliffe and Fanny Burney and Samuel Richardson. That's the primary reason I pick up those authors, because I figure Jane Austen was inspired by them. Jane Austen admired them. Jane Austen read them. There must be a reason that I also would benefit from reading them. So I haven't regretted a single one of them. I don't particularly understand The Love Affair with Pamela by Samuel Richardson, but at the same time, I did gain some things from it and I appreciated the reading experience. So I haven't regretted any of them, and I look forward to reading more works that inspired Austen this year. We're going to be reading The Mysteries of Udolpho, among other things, in preparation for reading Northanger Abbey. So, and we also, I have read this last year, and it really improved my understanding of Mansfield Park, The Lover's Vows, the play that the characters perform in that book. So we will also be reading some books that are related to Austen's inspiration for writing her books. So you can be a part of this journey as well. So thank you for coming along with me. I realized we took kind of a pretty convoluted walk, very much like meandering through this not very direct path of my journey with Jane Austen, but please tell me in the comments how your journey with Jane Austen has looked. When did you first fall in love with her works? Have you read any of them at all? Have you been introduced to Jane yet? And let's keep the conversation going in the comments, and I will talk to you next time.